Hey everybody, welcome to this video tutorial about how to set up green screen that not only knocks out clean, but it also provides a very pleasing light for your subjects. If you're like me, you really don't like green screen lighting. There's either one light directly above you shining down on your subject, or two lights that are equidistant from your subject at the same power output. And this is pretty harsh, and this is pretty flat. So I'm here to show you how to create a lighting ratio from either side of the face that also is good for extraction. So I've provided you with my setup notes for both head and shoulders and 3/4 length photos. The lighting setup can be used interchangeably, but for taller subjects you may have to raise your lights a little bit for 3/4. Those notes indicate a couple of different ways of metering your lights. I've given you measurements, distances from your subject. You can also use handheld light meters. If you're using flashpoint lights with variable output, I've put exactly the distances and the power output settings that I used in my setup. Another tool that I'm using in this setup to help get my lights in the precise location every single time is this mat. Now you'll notice it's just a vinyl banner with this little magnet in the back, and it allows this magnetic tape measure to adhere to it, and this gives you 360 degrees of measurement capability. So if I have one light set at 40 degrees and 63 inches, all I have to do is set this down underneath where my subject will be located and measure it out. And I can do that all the way around for as many lights and props as I can imagine. All right, so before we get started, I want to tell you a couple of things that are very crucial to this setup. The first is the recommended background. We're using a Westcott 9x10 green screen background. It's seamless and it's very, very wrinkle resistant. It's actually what 36pix recommends for all of their green screen users. It's phenomenal, it provides really good coverage, and the type of material that it's made out of blocks light from reflecting back onto your subject. The second most crucial component is spill suppression. Now this can be achieved in two ways. Make sure your subject is at least 4 feet from your background. I prefer 5. The other thing is, if you have excess background that goes onto the floor, make sure you've taken that and tucked it underneath. That background that is on the floor is the biggest culprit of light coming from your hair light and light coming from your main lights and reflecting back onto your subject. We want to minimize spill where at all possible, and that means minimizing unnecessary background. So you'll notice in the background setup that I have here, I've just kind of hung it, I've put a couple of clips in, but we have these wrinkles that are forming. And so with just a slight modification, pulling that background taut and clipping it to the background pole, we completely eliminate those wrinkles. And it's very, very important to do that. Wrinkles do affect the quality of your knockout. It makes it much harder for the extraction to look good around the edges. It actually makes the edges look harder, and that's very undesirable around hair and the edges of clothing. All right, so a couple of notes about the equipment I'm using. Over here on my main light, I'm using a large softbox, and over here on my fill light, I'm using a 51-inch parabolic umbrella. All right, so sitting down here, we have the lovely Karen, and she's gonna be our model today. I wanted to show you guys very briefly what it looks like when this setup is photographed. So for this first shot, she's going to sit down. She's going to point both of her knees at the main light. I always like that because it's easy to tell a subject how to orient themselves when they sit down in your chair. She's going to turn her head towards me, and then we're going to snap the photo. Now, I have metered all of these lights at f11, but I have set my camera at f13. I prefer to do this. It really, really helps when you photograph a large gamut of skin tones, from very, very pale people to very, very dark complected people. It allows those highlights in the very, very pale people to be salvaged while not sacrificing a great deal of quality in your darker complexions. All right, so we're finished with our head and shoulders picture, and now we're going to move on to our standing pose. So Karen stands up and she puts one hand on her hips. Now, when you set this up, if you've used the guides that I've provided, you're going to notice that you see a little bit of floor. In that guide, I have provided an 8x10 cropped aspect ratio overlaid on the image sample. You see a little bit of the floor, but it falls outside of those 8x10 guides. So as long as you are sending the order to us, we by default crop to an 8x10, so that floor will not be in the photograph. But you need to be very careful. If you need to adjust your heights or maybe put your subjects on a slightly elevated surface in front of your background, do whatever you need to do. Just make sure that floor is not within your 8x10 crop ratio. All right, so here are our final results, and I'm going to take you guys through the process of how they're knocked out, how they're extracted, and then how they're ultimately rendered onto a background to show you that these images look fantastic and they look like actual portraits. All right, guys, so I hope you found this very helpful in both giving your images a little bit more life through lighting and guaranteeing you have a quality knockout. I've included both of my setup guides, which are identical, and 36pix GSI analysis of the image. That is where they take the photograph through their algorithms and give you a report card based on what you've done. They have given it their seal of approval, Terry has given it her seal of approval, and you are ready to start shooting green screen successfully. And if you're interested in this tool, get with me, I can give you the specs. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and follow our YouTube channel, and check back with me for all the latest lab offerings. Thank you.